And welcome back, everyone, to the 39 Days podcast with Alex and Andrew. I'm Alex. That is Andrew.
Howdy, everyone. It's been a while.
He's got hiccups. We're talking about Survivor. It's going to be great. We have not talked about Survivor in about 2-ish weeks, I think.
Probably
something
three.
like that. Yeah, something like that. We've been busy, but today we're just going to be going over the last couple episodes because Hai was voted out, Drea was voted out, Omar was voted out last night, and next week is the finale, which, honestly, every single season, it seems like the finale just comes way too fast. And it might be because of the fact that this season was 26 episodes, but yeah, Andrew, how's things?
Well, I'm not going to mention the fact that you said 26 episodes instead of 26
26 days, episodes, it's fine. We haven't potted in a while. I'm going to chalk it up to that.
You're definitely right, though, that the finale always seems to catch you off guard. And I think part of that is that we haven't had mind-blowing strategy this season.
No.
Super likable cast, but I've ultimately been a little disappointed by the gameplay this season. And I hate saying that the finale is going to put this season to bed, because then it seems like I hated it. I'm ready for it to be over. But also I kind of expected more from this season. I know we were super critical of season 41, and then it ended up being awesome. And this season, credit to the players for, I think the last 3 eliminations were 3 of the 4 or 5 best players and the entire cast, the whole season.
Oh yeah,
three of them went out back to back within the last 3 weeks. So credit to the players who are left right now for getting out the best players. That's good on them. You don't win unless you get out people who are the bigger threats. But it's been a very weird season, and I think it's a very odd cast of characters who are left. We have a GOAT. We have a couple social players with not much strategical play with them. We have a physical threat. And then we have one person who's pretty well-rounded. That's Lindsay, who you actually picked right off the shoot to win the season. But she's left without any allies. So I'm very curious to see how the finale plays out.
Yeah, it's... To go off what you said, we were so critical of season 41. And the end, I would say the last half of season 41 was fantastic. The beginning half of it, though, was very, very rough. And I think that's what kind of led to us being so critical, because they realized, all right, it's different. They had to cram a lot more into it. Where this season, we were kind of prepared to that. We knew it would be the same type of thing as 41, but we were given kind of a way more likable cast. But with that, it kind of took away all the strategic value of their gameplay. Because I would say the 3 biggest strategic votes have been the last 3 votes, with Marianne kind of blindsiding Omar. There was the blindside of Drea and the blindside of Hai.
And it's been so weird if you look at the amount of advantages that have been thrown in this season, and none of them have come to fruition.
No.
Drea told Omar that she had the knowledge is power advantage. And by the way, shout out to you, because you were absolutely right. And we were talking about this on I think it was our last podcast. It's been been a while, where if she asked the question, she doesn't just get validation from Jeff that they're right, but she gets the advantage. So she made the mistake of telling Omar, and then they did the whole season 41 switcheroo where you knew who was going to get asked, and you made sure that it was in someone else's pocket. Jeff could validate it. That didn't happen. You had the 3 amulets that are now rendered useless because Hai went out, Dre went out. Lindsay had the idol, but it expired this past week. Of course, she had the immunity necklace around her neck, so she didn't need it, but she could have, in theory, given immunity to, let's say, Omar, who she wanted to guard, and then use the immunity, the amulet immunity for herself. The only real advantage that's really made a big play was Marianne using her extra vote this past week. Otherwise, there's just been a ton of advantages thrown into the season, and none of them have been impactful.
You think about it, so far this season, there's been so many, but there hasn't been one idol that's been played.
Well, there were. It was the
shot in the darks.
No. Marianne and Drea both used their advantage.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Their idols back to back, and that was a whole other story. And credit to them for it, but at least you feel like you got some validation that an idol was played to protect people.
I did forget about that one.
But yeah, Mike still has his. He has to use it this week. Marianne found another one. She has to use it this week. So that's funny that you have 5 players left, and 3 of the final 4 are going to be locked in on either immunity idols or the immunity challenge
The
win.
immunity challenge, yeah.
So it's going to be a mad dash for 3 other people to get one remaining spot, or I guess 2 people to get one spot. But
yeah,
crazy.
And that's what made. So one thing I remember saying, I remember saying as if it wasn't 24 hours ago. But I said it to my mother when we were watching it that last night's episode was one of the best of this season, I think, just because going into that tribal had no clue who was going home. And the one thing that I've been super critical about this season and a little bit about last season is that every single tribal, it seems like you have an idea of who it's going to be between going home. There's always like 2 people that it's going to be one or the other. And last night, I had no idea. There was a case to be made that it could have been Omar, it could have been Jonathan, it could have been Romeo, it could have been Mike. You just knew it wasn't going to be Lindsay because she had won immunity. So yeah, I think this season has gotten the reason that this season was so middle of the road was not because of the players. I think it was more because of the gameplay and just the predictability of it. We had an idea of what was going to happen. We had an idea of, what people were going to do. And because of that, it just kind of was a little dull, where last season, the ending, the last 4 or 5 episodes was just chaos. And I think that's the main thing, the main differences between these last 2 seasons.
Yeah, it's certainly been weird. And there's, of course, outside factors that affected that as well. Obviously, the whole social issue that led to Tori getting voted out. You had the really weird vote where Lydia went out, which, if you think about it, was a huge turning point in the season because Hai went not soon after. Chanel was, I believe, the next vote. So that whole Vati original tribe got cleaned out. Like Mike's the only one left on that tribe, right?
Yeah.
That they got cleaned out very soon after, and that elimination of Lydia was a turning point in this whole season. But it does feel like we've expected more strategical play, and I don't know if I sent it out from our Twitter account or I maybe even mentioned it to you in a message or on this podcast, but it seems like a lot of eliminations in the early part of the game are kind of just like, well, as long as it's not me, I guess I'm okay with this person going out. And there wasn't a lot of like, well, we need to keep our numbers. And that's one thing actually I was talking about last night, where if you think about the season on a whole, like compared to any other season you've watched, you get to a merge of, let's say, 11 people. And there's usually a group of 7 versus a group of 4, 6 versus 5, or 4 versus 4 versus 3, or something, right? And now that we're down to 5, and even if you go back a couple weeks, 6 and 7, it doesn't seem like there was a group of X versus a group of Y. It just kind of seemed like everyone is kind of just floating, and they all collectively just say, well, this is the person we got to get out this week, which I don't hate. It's a new strategy, but and certainly I've hated the group of 6 picks off the group of 5 one by one, and then they're left with 6, and then what do they do?
The Redemption Island.
Yeah, that's the worst. Is One World with the Women's Alliance picking off all the men, and Redemption Island where Boston Rob just completely took over those votes.
Yeah, the ones where you have the group that's taking over, and everyone, it's like one person each episode has a chance to kind of throw a wrench and everything, and they don't. You just want something to happen.
They're like, oh, well, I'm just going to bide my time. It's like by the time you actually make your move, you're going to be outnumbered 6-1, or you'll hang around until they start picking off 1 or 2 of their own, and then you'll be the 5th to last person vote. It's like you need to make, if you want to make a play, you need to utilize the numbers when you have it. And credit to this season for not even complying with that general strategy where they're all kind of just floaters. And that's a little Jeremy Collins-esque, but at least with him, it was like 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 and 2.
I was going to bring that up. It was like, this is a little bit like the idea of the voting blocks that Jeremy Collins came up with, but it's also not, because this seems more like just everyone for themselves.
Everyone for themselves, and let's just scramble and figure out numbers like the day of the vote.
A group of 2 working with a different group of 2 every week. So, yeah, it's the aspect of having everyone for themselves is good, but at the same time, it gets a little I don't know how to say. It's not chaotic. It's weird.
Yeah, if
You
you think
know?
about the social scramble this season, I'm going to focus on particularly Mike, for example, because
Mm,
we can get into this later in the show and how I personally feel about the way he's played his strategic game. But Mike was super close with Hai. Omar lied to him and said that Hai was trying to manipulate him. Meanwhile, Omar was the one who was holding all the puppet strings, right? And then he turned on him, and then he was like, "Okay, I'm in bed with Omar. We're good together. Let's work this out." And then all of a sudden he was like, "Oh, cool, we voted together, but clearly I know he's working me too." So he kind of realized like, "Oh, he's a manipulator." But Hai was already gone, so it's too late. And then he flipped on him, and now I guess Omar went home, but he wasn't even involved in that vote because he voted for Romeo. So like, there's no lineage from episode to episode of people trying to
that's
get
the
someone out and
thing.
work with certain
It's
people. It's
like
just kind of
the
chaotic.
only consistent thing throughout this entire season is everyone trying to get Jonathan out, but Jonathan always seems like he's on the back burner. He's always like, yeah, well, I guess it's like Jonathan and Romeo. Everyone's like, yeah, well, if we don't have anyone, we'll just vote Romeo out. And then Jonathan doesn't win 2 immunity challenges, and they're like, all right, we're going Jonathan, and then someone switches it all up, and Jonathan ends up staying.
That whole Jonathan and Mike voting for Romeo this week, I guess because they didn't know who else and it was a safe vote kind of thing.
I
Like that just showed
legitimately
how out of
thought
the loop they are.
I actually thought it was Marianne who said that. Like I really think there was a conversation she had with them where basically she told them to vote Romeo in case Lindsay played her idol for Omar, so that Jonathan wouldn't be going home. There's a chance that Romeo would be going home. There'd be a 2-2 tie.
Yeah, but
That's
then
what I
she
thought
used
it
her extra
was.
vote for Omar,
Yeah, no, the
which
whole thing was to get Omar out. But if Lindsay played her idol for Omar, she wanted there to be a 2-2 tie.
and then I guess she would have used her extra vote. She would have gotten it back, right? And could have used it on.
I don't know if she would have gotten
Jonathan.
it back, but either way, it wouldn't have mattered.
Well, yeah, then you would have had
If
four
she
people
hadn't have
voting,
used it, it would have been 2-2-2 in terms of votes.
and then it would have been three people voting out of the
Three
six.
people voting, and the three people would have been Lindsay, Marianne, and Mike.
Yeah.
And Omar wouldn't have gone home then.
Mm. Yeah, that's really strange.
Yeah.
I guess he could have, right? If well, Lindsay wouldn't have turned on him, but Marianne and Mike could have still.
Yeah.
So
But
that
at the
could have
same
been. Like,
time,
she could have said,
Jonathan
"I'm
could
going
have
to
gone
throw
home
my
too.
extra votes on Omar, and if he plays his idol, at least me and Mike will turn it when we
Mhm.
get to the vote." Yeah, it's just really weird. Eh, But I will say one of the most amusing things is the Cold War going on between Lindsay and Jonathan, because
Yeah.
they've been together since day one and they
Well-
were super tight for a while. And they made a point. I think it was Lindsay who said it in a confessional, like the fourth or fifth episode, like, I don't want to make it clear that I'm working with him
Mhm.
because he's a big target. Everyone knows he's this big challenge beast, and I don't want to be associated with that, which is brilliant because, like,
Yeah.
I'm going to work with him, but I don't want people to know I'm working with him because then as soon as they get him out, then I'm the next target.
Lindsay
And now all of a sudden they're totally
Lindsay
diametrically
used
opposed.
Jonathan as a shield flawlessly this
Perfectly.
season.
Yes.
Nobody even remotely realized she was a threat until probably 4 or 5 episodes ago. Like
a good
a good amount of time after the merge, once she kind of established herself as an individual challenge threat, everyone kind of realized, oh, Lindsay is good at challenges. And then it became, her versus Jonathan in these challenges.
Yeah,
And that's
the
the
only
big thing.
the only point where she's like a glaring threat is right now going to the finale because she has no allies left. She's won 2 of the last 3 or 2 straight immunity
2 of the
challenges.
last 3, Jonathan won last week.
And she's a very obvious, likable person who can get jury votes. She has a lot of friends on the jury. I feel like Chanel would vote for her, Omar would vote for her, Hai would vote for her.
It's not
Lydia
even
would
that
probably
she has
vote
a
for her.
lot of friends on the jury. She just didn't piss off a lot of people on the jury.
I feel like there's people who will vote for her because they respect her game.
Listen, think about it. If you put her, honestly, at this point, if you put her next to Jonathan in the final 3, I think she wins.
I think she cleans up.
Yeah, because Jonathan didn't exactly make enemies. People just never wanted to see him win.
And he's been on the wrong side of a lot of votes.
Yeah, he has.
So it's like
that's
it's
one
the
thing
Kobe Donaldson effect. Like, you made it to the end based on physical
you
abilities.
can be strong, but
you
you have no relationships with any of these people.
And you have no big moves to put on your resume to say, I did this to topple this person, and without this big move, I wouldn't be sitting here at Final Tribal.
Yeah. And that's not,
Yeah.
to his credit, he has tried. He has tried to make some moves, but I just don't think he's a very strategic person. Like, you have the moment, I forget which episode it was, but when he came up with this big plan, it was the one where Tori went home and he wanted to get Drea out and blindside Drea, and Lindsay immediately poked holes in it. Like, he's tried to make big moves. He just doesn't think them through, and they have holes in them. So he's tried to do things to put himself in a better position. He just doesn't. I just don't think he physically has the capacity to do that.
Yeah, it's been upsetting, but I still like him. I don't know if I want him to win.
I don't know.
If you had to just guess based on the final five, like I know you have a rooting interest in Lindsay. I have a rooting interest in Lindsay and Marianne because they're the remaining players on my team. If you want to go throw up the graphic at this point, you can certainly do so.
Yeah, put up the graphic now. Look, it's 3-2. I've lost the big comeback, right? It was
8-3. It's down to 3-2. But yeah, if you had not just based on like not who you want to win, but based on who you think is deserving of winning and who do you think actually is the front runner at this point, like of the five, who would you say like going into the finale is probably the favorite?
Going into the finale of like who deserves to win or who I think will win.
For me, I have
different answers.
For me, it's the same, but yeah, I would say who do you think maybe is most likely to win based on all the empirical evidence of like the previous votes, where people stand in relationships, any advantages potentially. Who do you think? Like, we could do power rankings too, but like if you had to do like who's your favorite going into the finale?
I gotta go with Jonathan, and I don't want to say him. I just don't see how. If he makes it to the end, unless he's put up, I don't see any scenario where both him and Lindsay are in the end. And I think he has a better chance of winning out than Lindsay does. So I think whichever one of them loses an immunity challenge, they're either next week or for fire making, they're going home.
Okay. Yeah, I just don't know if he has enough on his resume.
And that's the thing. I don't know if he does either, but I really think that next week it's going to be between him, Lindsay, and Marianne that goes home. And then it's going to be whichever one of those two that survives goes home. Well, maybe someone else for fire.
I would say of that three, if they're playing it smart, only one of them goes to final three. But for me, it's got to be Marianne, and I feel very weird about that because I liked her from the beginning.
Marianne has been one of the most likable people in this season, but she hasn't done much.
Yeah, but she's made some big moves of late.
The Omar one was the biggest one,
and that's the thing because I talked for weeks that like they're stupid if they don't vote out Omar. Like he is for sure. He's the puppet master. He's the one holding all the strings, and he's manipulated everyone
Omar
to basically almost flawless perfection.
Omar this season was the Ricard of last season.
Yeah, and he made it farther. And I thought, like this guy, they don't see that he's the big manipulator, and he's going to get to the end, and he deserves to win in a landslide if he gets there. And look, credit to Marianne, she took matters into her own hands. And I remember she had a quote early in the episode that basically said, "What was it? Just like, oh, Omar's kind of been sitting in the back waiting the whole time," or like was it the caterpillar becoming a butterfly? Would she say that about him? And I immediately fired off a tweet like what are you nuts? Like he may seem like he's sitting in the back, but he's literally been driving the bus the whole time.
Yeah, no,
and then I think she finally realized
the jury saw Omar go from a caterpillar and like transform into a butterfly. And she had another good point. She was like, I don't want to vote Omar out, but the only way I win is if I vote him out.
Which is what we said about Ricard and Shan.
Exactly.
Like, and I think
look who won last season. The girl who masterminded getting Ricard and Shan.
Both of them. Yeah. And that's why I think Marianne is well positioned right now. Like if you want to play the Canadian connection like Erica last season.
No,
Marianne this season.
I definitely can see Marianne winning, but the big thing for me is the Final Five immunity challenge.
Yeah.
Because
Lindsay has to win. She doesn't have allies.
Exactly. If we look at the five, it's Mike, Jonathan, Lindsay, Marianne, Romeo. Okay. Let's go through it. It's automatically down to 4 because Romeo's not going to win. Mike, not the world's most athletic guy just because of his age. I'd say it's between Lindsay, Jonathan, Marianne. Marianne has not exactly been a challenge beast. So it's basically between Lindsay and Jonathan. Whoever wins.
It's been for the last few weeks.
Exactly. So whichever one of them wins is going to be in the driver's seat. And they're going to be gunning for each other. But at the same time, we really have not seen them go through with it. I'm not convinced that Lindsay and Jonathan going head to head is ever going to actually come to fruition, So I feel like, Lindsay at the last minute, maybe she'll be like, yeah, I have to get Jonathan out. But Marianne pulled a big move last tribal, and I think she's a much bigger threat than Jonathan, so she has to go, and then all of a sudden Marianne's gone.
Yeah, so with Marianne, she doesn't even need to win because she has an idol. Mike doesn't need to win because he has an idol. Yeah. So those two are guaranteed to at least make the final 4. And then you have 2 spots left between Romeo, Lindsay, and Jonathan. I can't imagine they're going to put an idol back in play because the amulet one kind of just lapsed. It didn't.
I don't think they will.
And that's a funny story. Lindsay talked about I don't want to use the amulet because then it'll go back in. But that was a special one. That wasn't like a hidden immunity. So I don't.
Plus, she didn't use it.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
So she didn't want to use it and then have it come back in and someone else find it.
The thing is, though, they were going through in the preview of the finale. There was a lot of showing them running around looking for stuff.
Well, look. Here's my take on that. And because we've seen Survivor 41, remember there was the whole you got to solve this puzzle and then you get an advantage of the final tribal.
I forgot.
So we were playing game within the game, and I think the puzzle was your treasure lies where the trees dance or something along those lines. And then they had to either dig in the sand or it was hung around one of the trees. And I believe Erica found it, right? And had the advantage at the final 5 immunity, which got her to final 4. And that's kind of why she won. I think it's probably going to be that type of scramble, not a look for an idol.
Yeah.
I can't imagine they would introduce an idol right before it has to be used. But
I don't know. They've done it before. I can't really see them doing that though. I don't know. It's so hard to predict. And Jeff posted a thing on Instagram saying this is one of the best final 5s going into the finale ever. And I was like, at first I was kind of skeptical, but then at the same time I was like, he's not really wrong because I have no idea who's going to win.
Yeah, it's a very level field.
It's so up in the air. And it's not like you have to vote someone out. Like Survivor 41, the final 5 was Ricard, Heather, Xander, Deshawn, Erica. Everyone knew Ricard makes it to the end, he's going to win. And this final 5, there's 4 people I can see winning.
Yeah, I don't think there's one person who we can definitively say if they get to the end, they're going to win.
Yeah,
with Marianne, she'll get the Xander treatment. We were so sure, they played a likable game.
That's true.
They had a bunch of friends on the jury, and then Xander got there, and they were like, "Bro, what did you do?"
Mm-hmm.
And it was funny because I remember I was following Danny on. He tweeted that a bunch, or maybe it was an interview we had with Entertainment Weekly.
It was Danny, I remember.
Where he said
that.
"Oh,
we didn't think really Xander was that much of a threat."
And I showed him, I was like, what are we missing? And maybe it was just the edit. Maybe we just misinterpreted how it happened. But I could see that happening with someone like Marianne. Lindsay, we know will be in good position, but I can't say definitively if she gets the final 3, it's a lock.
Yeah.
Jonathan.
It depends on who Lindsay is up against, I think.
I think the only person, like you said, that we definitively 100% certainty know will not win this game
is Romeo.
Barring something wild happening at 5 and 4. Is Romeo because he's just been there. He hasn't done anything. He's been on the wrong side of most of the votes.
He hasn't.
And there's nothing.
It's not even that he's been on the wrong side of most of the votes. He's been a vote since the merge. He has done nothing.
The only vote that he successfully swayed was the Omar vote this week.
Yeah,
And it took the person he voted with having an extra vote.
But it's not like he
win.
was the mastermind behind that. Marianne used him as a vote, you know?
Correct.
So I cannot fathom any reason for him to win. It's not even like Heather last season where we thought, okay, maybe because she was with Erica this whole time, maybe she was kind of the mastermind behind everything and people viewed her in a different way. Nobody this season really likes Romeo that much. They've been saying we need to get him out for a while, but it's not because he's such a threat. It's just because he's the backup. He's okay, we have to vote someone out, so he's the person to vote out. So, yeah, I think I would be so unbelievably shocked if Romeo wins it.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
Yeah. But yeah, next week finale. I think it's got to be 2 hours. I would think.
Probably.
The finales normally
For
are
an hour and a half at the worst. Yeah.
They're probably going to do the same thing where they announce it on site, and then they do the
which I really like that. I did like
that. And it's the first time they had done that literally since season 1, which was a nice little twist. It's not going to be as exciting as last season just because we're kind of expecting it. But they don't
Jeff did leak that was going to be the case.
Yeah.
The weeks leading up, but yeah. So
exactly.
We'll be back here next week. Maybe Wednesday night, right after the finale. Alex may have some champagne in hand if Lindsay is the champion. That would be great. Just for our own little
for our rivalry,
whatever.
For our own competitiveness, because you and I are very competitive people.
Oh, you don't.
For you to correctly pick Erica last season, for me to correctly pick Lindsay this season, season 43 is just going to be a bloodbath between us.
So what you're saying is Romeo was going to win, so that doesn't happen. Although at the least, Romeo was on your team.
Romeo's on my my team. Jonathan, Mike, Romeo versus you having Lindsay and Marianne.
Yeah.
And I'm like 90% sure Romeo is my number 1 pick.
Was he your number 1 pick? Wow,
I think he was.
Check the archives on that. I thought it was
Jonathan, I don't want to go back and check the archives. I think he was my number 1 pick, which I don't love. But honestly, he's looking like a lock to be Final 3 right now. So
credit to him and the 100K he's going to get or whatever it is.
Exactly. But I think I think we can wrap it up here. What do you say?
Yeah.
We'll be back next week for the finale. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you then, and go Lindsay.